This week in the skies, there are some pretty big things happening, and I'm going to go through all of them in the Mainly Moonology podcast. Plus, I'll be talking about not just the astrology, I will be talking about the Moonology. I'll be doing a card from my beautiful Moonology messages deck where you can ask any question, and I'll be doing a reader question. Is it yours this week? Find out.
What's in the stars?
So this week we have some pretty intense astrology, and I'm going to go through it through the four major alignments one by one, but there's actually a fifth I'm going to mention as well. So to start with, on August 14, which by the way is Wednesday, that's UK time, but it's pretty much, same around the world. There's going to be a very major alignment between two planets, Mars and Jupiter. Now, on the one hand, you can say, well, Jupiter is the lucky planet. I did hear someone called Robert Hand, who's pretty much the world's most famous astrologer in astrology circles. I did hear the venerable Mr. Robert Hand once upon a time at a lecture say, there's no such thing as a bad Jupiter transit. And I've always remembered that. However, as other people have pointed out to me since, Mr. Hand is a Sagittarian, and he just views life through a positive lens, which is great. And there can be problems with Jupiter because Jupiter is actually the amplifier. So not to disagree with the world's most famous astrologer, and let's, err on the side of optimism, but also be aware that, so Jupiter's like an amplification planet. Mars is the planet of sex and drive and anger and brashness and the angry male and determination and pushing forward towards whatever you want. So on the one hand, this is a very good week if you are ready to really go for it. What do you want to achieve in your life in the coming 7 days? The Mars-Jupiter connection is going to be really powerful for helping you to achieve that. It's a very dynamic alignment. It only happens about once every 2 years, and it supercharges action. So it supercharges our actions, what we're going out to do with Jupiter's very expansive energy. Now it's taking place in the sign of Gemini. Again, it's a kind of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, that's brilliant because Gemini is the planet of the mind, and it's of communication. So it's a time to really have the Jupiterian confidence to just go for it and say what you need to say. But as I'm sure you can imagine without too much explanation, since I've told you about Mars being the planet of anger and brashness, meeting Jupiter, the amplification planet in Gemini, the sign of communication, it can be a time where people are just going to be just talking their head off and not listening. Now, here in the UK, we've actually had riots this week because of a terrible tragedy that happened, which then some people decide was a good excuse to go and raid, start looting the shops and rioting and so on and so forth. And, that's very Mars-Jupiter. So even though it's still about a week out, these things are not like light switches. I always say they're not like light switches. They don't switch on and off. You really feel them in the lead up, and then afterwards it's not that you feel them so much, but you have the aftermath to deal with. So I'm hoping from the UK perspective that this is not going to exacerbate things, because things have been pretty intense. Hopefully we've seen the peak of it. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, well, there's actually three more things I wanted to talk about, but is the fact that we still have Mercury going retrograde at the moment. Now, Mercury retrograde actually started last week. I didn't mention it because I repeated that episode that I have about 8-8 Lionsgate and is it really astrology? If you missed it, go back and have a listen. It's evergreen. It's I actually recorded it a few years ago, but I play it out every time that we get to 8-8 Lionsgate because I like people to understand what it is and isn't. So I didn't mention the fact that Mercury's been retrograde, but Mercury is actually retrograde. I think it went retrograde on August the 4th, the day of the new moon. So Mercury is still retrograde. It started off in Virgo, okay, which was quite tricky. It was kind of a double whammy because Virgo is one of the two signs ruled by Mercury. There's Gemini and Virgo. So it's a very organized sign. And of course, Mercury going backwards, Mercury being the planet of communications, it can be a really disorienting thing. It can be a messy time. I personally was in Paris last week at the Olympics, and I couldn't help but notice there were so many times being revised and medals being re-awarded and so on and so forth. More, I think, than usual. I mean, somebody could research that, I don't know, but it seemed to me that there were lots of rethinks and revises going on at the Olympics. And that was not least because Mercury was retrograde, and Mercury was retrograde in Virgo. And now Mercury is going back into the sign of Leo. Okay, so Leo is the 5th sign of the zodiac. It's very creative, it's very expressive, it's very much about, oh, look at me, I'm so fabulous, darling. And we all have Leo in our chart somewhere. So in a way, what we could say is it's a very good chance, if you need it, to really reacquaint yourself with what is fabulous about you. Now, let's just break that down a bit. You know, obviously in this world, there are times where we go through good patches and we go through patches where we're not feeling our best. Okay, and that's just how life goes. Life goes in cycles. Sometimes it's up and sometimes it's down. As an astrologer, I'm very aware that life goes in cycles because astrology goes in cycles. So if you've been through a period where you've been feeling less than fabulous about yourself, then I really think that now is the time for you to take a moment and just start to think about who you really are. Who are you really? Okay, and what is really something special about you? Okay, because sometimes when people pour SHIT on our heads, we forget what is good about us, you know? We forget, we get lost. So I would say to you, remember who you really are this week, okay? It's the time to really reconnect with your fabulousness. It's a really good time to do it. So Mercury re-enters expressive Leo, encouraging bold, creative thinking as well. So it's not just about reacquainting yourself with your fabulousness, but also think about what you create, what you're creating in life. You know, if there's something you've been wanting to create or manifest in your life and you just haven't been able to pull it off, don't give up yet, because actually Mercury going backwards in Leo is actually a second chance to recreate something. Now, it can actually be something in your life, but it can also be, you know, if you're artistic and you've fallen off the bandwagon, it's a really good time to reacquaint yourself with your creative powers, okay? Or reacquaint yourself with really getting into your heart is a really good one, because Leo is all about the heart. And Leo is also very much a sign of the leader, someone who likes to put themselves forward. If you haven't been doing that lately, have a think about, you know, maybe you do need just to believe in yourself a little bit more. Now, here at Moonology, mainly Moonology, we are all about manifesting. And so with manifesting, where does this come into it? It can be very much a time to start re-believing in yourself, because when you believe in yourself, that's when your manifesting is going to start to really kick in. And I see everybody talking about manifesting these days on my Instagram feed, and most people are saying exactly what I agree, which is if you can really believe it, you can achieve it. So Leo being the sign of self-belief and self-love and self-confidence, if you can reconnect with those parts of yourself this week, you're going to find that you start to become a better manifester. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of homework if you can do it. I'm actually just going to put a little bit of music under here, and I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And I'm going to ask you to bring to mind at least one thing about yourself that you know is fantastic. And you can say it silently or out loud. This one thing at least which you know about yourself is fantastic. What is it? And just put your hands on your heart, very Leo. very Leo is the heart. And just think, thank you, me, thank you. Okay, all right. So we have Mercury going back into Leo. We also have something else happening on the same day, on the 15th of August. We actually have a beautiful alignment from the Sun to Chiron. So Chiron is the planetoid known as the wounded healer. Okay, so when they are aligned like this, it's actually a really nice chance to think about what would it take for you to feel that a certain difficult situation was healed. Okay, what would have to happen for you to feel that a certain situation was healed? So so the Sun's going to be in Leo because we've just had the new moon in Leo, plus we've got Chiron, the wounded healer, in the sign of Aries. So Chiron is retrograde as well. So all in all, it's very much a time to think about where in your life do you need healing, okay? Where in your life do you need to rethink, revise, revisit, re-edit, anything like that with Mercury retrograde, okay? Where do you need to believe in yourself more with Mercury retrograde in Leo? And where do you need healing? Now, one of the keys to working with healing is to ask yourself, what would this situation look like if it were healed? What would this situation look like if it were healed? So I'm just going to again ask you to put a little bit of music. Close your eyes. Think about your most pressing dilemma that you want a second chance with, because Mercury retrograde being second chances. What would this situation look like if it were healed? And just visualize it in your mind's eye. And we'll just call in the energy of the Sun and Chiron. Call in the energy of Jesus, who I've told you has been swirling around me, known as the greatest healer ever. All right, so just call in Jesus. Jesus, thank you for healing my life. And thank you for healing anything else that needs healing. And so it is. Right, there we go. All right, so what else have we got? The other thing I wanted to mention is actually a little bit different and a little bit jarring, okay? It's actually a challenging aspect between Mars and Saturn. So first of all, we have Mars conjoining Jupiter in the sign of Gemini, as I mentioned, and then Mars keeps going and then clashes with Saturn. So I mean, I mentioned the riots that have been going on here in the UK. It could be a little bit problematic, or it might just be when justice is being done. Because Mars, as I said, pushes forward. Saturn is actually the sign of authority. So when Mars clashes with Saturn, it can be a clash with authority. Tensions, the need for discipline, frustrations, and just generally trying to get something done, but it's not that easy. So it's a kind of a mixed week. Mars conjunct Jupiter, potentially very good. Mercury retrograde, potentially second chances, chance to believe in yourself more, but can also be confusing. Sun trine Chiron, potentially a lot of healing in the air. So if there's something you need to heal, including say a relationship, where personal or professional, where you need to sort of say sorry, or you want to take steps in a healing direction, a really good week for it. But also be aware that Mars square Saturn means that there are going to be limitations, and it's not going to be all beer and Skittles. So I hope that helps you understand the astrology for the week ahead. Now, here is the Moonology for the week ahead.
Where's the moon?
All right, so I'm just going to start this little segment off by saying I've just had a look at myself properly in the camera, and I know I do look a bit of a mess. For those of you watching on YouTube, I'm very sorry. I've just got back from France today. I woke up early, packed, got the train home, went under the English Channel, and here I am. So excuse me for looking a bit of a mess. So the Moonology, this week we get the quarter moon in Scorpio. That's actually on August the 11th. So the quarter moon in Scorpio is a pretty interesting quarter moon because it's when the moon is in Scorpio and the sun is in Leo, and they are very different energies. So Leo, we've said, is out there, it's brash, it's look at me, aren't I fabulous? And as I keep saying, we do all have Leo in our chart somewhere. If you don't know what I mean, get a free chart from me. moonmessages.com/free chart, one word, moonmessages.com/free chart, and it will tell you where you have Leo in your chart. And then what happens is you had the new moon in Leo, the moon has kept moving. This week it ends up in Scorpio and it's going to clash with the sun. All right, so when this happens, there is a couple of things to be aware of. The first thing to be aware of is that the quarter moon is a time for gratitude, okay? Because it can be a time where there are challenges, especially with that Mars Saturn square we were talking about. So it can be a time of challenges, and the way to get out of your ego, especially if it's being challenged by someone or something, is to go into gratitude. So one thing I highly recommend that everybody does every quarter moon is take a moment to be grateful. So have a think about it right now. Who are you grateful for? What are you grateful for? Have you been focusing on what's difficult? What is it that really lights you up? Are you grateful for that? Who is it that really lights you up? Are you grateful for that? Are you showing the people that you really appreciate how much you appreciate them? Just take a moment this week. But you know, the other thing is, as well as being grateful, also understand there is a kind of a bit of a clash going on when we have these two opposing, well, they're not actually opposing, they're just actually at an angle like that. It's a 90-degree angle. When they're like that, it can be a time where there is conflict, you know, and because we've actually just had the new moon, you know, how are you feeling about that? Did you make your wishes? Did you send them out to the universe? Did you make your commitments to yourself about what you want to attract into your life? You know, and how are you going with that? Because this is the week where you may find that this quarter moon will bring up challenges that you need to work through if you are actually going to manifest whatever it is that you want to manifest. You know, and it ties back in with the astrology, because the astrology of self-belief. You know, do you believe in yourself? Maybe any crises that come around this week are going to be about you not believing in yourself enough. You know, and if that's the case, go back to what we said before. Think about one thing about you that is very much something you can believe in. And, you know, we have the sun in Leo, fabulous, fabulous sign. And then we have the moon in deep, dark Scorpio, also a fabulous sign, but you know how different they are. I'm sure even if you only know a little bit of astrology, you know, for as much as Leo is out there, Scorpio is inward facing, it's introspective, it likes to kind of be in the shadows. Leo is ruled by the sun, the fabulous sun that's just like, yes, you know, fabulous sun, center of our solar system. But Scorpio is ruled traditionally by the planet Pluto, the lord of the underworld. So whereas Leo comes out and says, I'm here, Pluto's like, are you kidding me? I'm not even sure I'm going to show my face. So there's a bit of that around. And, you know, there was an astrologer called Dane Rudyard, and he wrote pretty much one of the first defining books about the moon, called The Lunation Cycle. If you really want to get into Moonology, you do need to read Dane Rudyard, as much as my old mentor Jonathan Caney used to go, nobody reads Dane Rudyard. I'm like, well, I did. Because he's a bit dry and a bit academic in a way. But, you know, he talks about the quarter moon, which we have this week, as the crisis point. So really what you need to remember is any crises happening this week can well be the universe saying to you, how serious are you about manifesting your dreams? You know, especially with that Mars-Saturn clash going on, which is going to put a lot of people's noses out of joint and test many of us with short tempers on staying calm and cool, or not just giving up and throwing in the towel. How serious are you about what you say you want? You know, there's a little bit of that in the air this week as we head from the new moon last week to the full moon next week, which I will talk about more. So that is the Moonology for the week ahead. Now let's do an oracle card.
A message from the Moonology Oracle.
All right, so every week I do an oracle card. I do just one oracle card normally. I've done two sometimes. I know my team really liked it when I did two. Maybe I'll do two this week. So thinking about your biggest challenge, okay? Thinking about your biggest challenge, are you open to getting some advice from the cards? These are my beautiful Moonology messages cards, which came out with Hay House. I'm not sure, was it this year, last year? Not that long ago. They're my most recent deck. And actually in the box inside, it actually says, call on Goddess Saraswati to guide your intuition. Because, excuse me, these cards, I didn't really set out to do this, but as they say, every deck has a spirit of its own. Okay, and this deck definitely has a spirit of its own, and it's all about helping the user to use their intuition. Okay, so helping you to use your intuition. Because as much as, you know, some people go, oh, why do you use oracle cards? Because, you know, you should be able to do intuitive stuff without the help of oracle cards. I actually saw my lovely friend Kyle Gray talking about this the other day. He was saying that he gets criticized sometimes when he's doing psychic readings for using oracle cards, and people say, why do you need a prop? It's like, I don't need a prop. I just love oracle cards. And I'm kind of the same. All right, so you know, what is it? I mean, astrology doesn't need, I'm just going to pick two cards. Okay, there's one and there's two. Astrology doesn't need us to do an oracle card, but oracle cards are really a way to connect with your higher self, because on some level, you know what these two cards are about. You know what these two cards are about. You know which they are, because on some level you are psychic. Okay, so your higher self knows which of these two cards you need to choose to get the message that you need as we move through this week with all the astrology and the Moonology that I've been talking about. So is it to be this card number one or this card number two? Number one or number two? Which card is for you? Okay, number one I should say, or number two? All right, so if you chose card number one, aha. All right, you got the Reach for the Moon card with the message, go for it. All right, so it's pretty self-explanatory, but let's have a little look in the book. Go for it, reach for the moon. Reach for the moon. Reach for the moon. LMNOPQR. There we are. Go for it. All right, so if you chose Reach for the Moon. So if you were hoping the cards would confirm that you can get what you want, you are in luck. All right, this card comes with the message, go for it. In other words, it's all there for you to win. If you've been doubting yourself or questioning your ability to achieve a goal, this card reminds you you're magical and amazing and you can rise to the challenge. Don't give up. Success is within your grasp. And any challenges now can be character building. All right, so that's great if you went for card number one. Now, if you went for card number two, ooh, this is a nice card. They're not all like, you know, rainbows and unicorns. Actually, it's the Moon Call card, meant to be. So let me read you a bit about that. If you chose the second card, Moon Call. There we are. Meant to be. Oh, some things are just meant to be, and it seems as though this might apply to whatever you're asking about. That doesn't mean you can just sit around doing very little or nothing and expect everything to fall into your lap. We are all constantly creating our lives, so you need to do whatever's necessary to steer this situation in the direction you want it to go. But move forward in the knowledge that you're on the right track, or this card wouldn't have come up. This situation has meant to be written all over it. Create the reality you're dreaming of. All right. Now I'm just going to give you a few examples of other cards, so you don't think they're all just Pollyanna happy, because these were two nice cards. Forgiveness, which is, you know, you need to be more forgiving of someone. Release blocks, the past, leaving the past behind, and so on. So they're not all, you know, happy little cards. So I hope that helps you. And now stay tuned to find out if you are the person whose question is about to be answered. Once a week, I do answer a card. I answer a question from a reader. So let's go to that.
Your questions answered.
All right, so it's time for the reader question of the week. Are you ready? So every week I answer one question from a reader. My team choose them. You can write in to, I'm not sure actually where you're meant to write to, but just write to support@yasminboland.com for want of a better email address to give you. They will get to me. Just before I do that, I just want to take a moment to remind you about my Moonology diary for next year, which is now on sale. And depending on how fast you are, you may or may not get access to the Astrology for the second half of the year workshop that I did. The people who pre-ordered came to the live. They got to ask questions personally if they wanted to. They were in the room, but we have a recording which we're going to offer for a little while as one of the bonuses. We're going to come up with more bonuses as the year plays out till the end of the year, and you'll get more and more bonuses. And if you bought it last month, you'll still get all the bonuses as they come out. And if you buy it this month, you can't go to the live because that's done, but you can get a replay and there's other bonuses. Moonology Diary 2025. These diaries nearly always sell out. They are filled with all the information you could want about all the new moons and full moons of next year, the astrology of each month, and so on and so forth. All right, okay, so now let us look at the question. Now, we actually chose this question because it came in some time ago after I mentioned the Mars-Jupiter conjunction for some reason about a month ago. And someone said, I'm very nervous about Mars conjunct Jupiter in Gemini because I am Gemini. I'm worried about how to use this energy effectively rather than angrily, especially because I'm feeling so stuck right now. Okay, so this is a great question because guess what? This energy, the Mars-Jupiter energy this week, is anything but stuck. If anything, it's like a kick up your patootie, as I like to call it. That's actually from Karen in Gloucester. But you can write from anywhere in the world. Better if you give me your time, date, and place of birth in there. Karen didn't, but then I could look at your chart as well. But the long and the short of it is this energy this week is all about getting unstuck. And even though there might still be some people and some rules and regulations where it feels like we're being hampered from moving forward, honestly, anything that's stuck can start to shift this week. So please, Karen, don't worry about the energy. Don't think of it negatively. Think of it as a positive. Obviously, you know you have a bit of a temper, then it might be a good week to really do a bit of breath work, practice keeping your cool if people start to sort of provoke you as you see it. But overall, it's really a time to think, actually, I can move forwards. One way I like to describe Mars is that it's the engine of the zodiac, so it pushes us forward. So meeting up, it's once every 2-year meeting with Jupiter. It's very much about pushing forward, even though there might be some opposing forces. Just keep going. All right. And in fact, I've come to the end of the podcast pretty much now, and I'm going to give you something maybe I should have said at the start. But if nothing else, and well done for getting this far, this is a week to just keep going. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope to speak to you next week. And next week, I won't promise, but I promise I will try to brush my hair before I hit record on the camera. Lots of love.